All right, here we go on this Friday. Whoa, big news. Those of you that were watching last night, I said a big story in Cranston, and we delivered a big story in Cranston. We're also going to with Stephanie, legal expert, attorney Stephanie Murphy, coming up. Folks, again, it is Friday. We're starting this, Robin, just about 3 minutes. 3 minutes. Yes, Roger says we are good to go. My goodness, excuse me. Sorry about that, folks. All right, now I also want to, that's right, NIC. How about that? That story, as we talked about. Wow, that is really just amazing. But let me do one thing. Oh, it really is amazing. Thai Chu. The fact, last night we posted that we had a big story about a knife wielding illegal. What's interesting is the amount of people that immediately started objecting to it because they immediately assumed. And those of you that watched Road Patrol Live last night, I predicted, by the way, that would happen. There's Ryan, folks, Ryan's Appliance Repair. Without knowing anything, they start saying this is profiling. I got a vile message last night. Good thing I don't take this stuff personally. That they picked him up just because he spit. That he's Asian. He's Asian. You have no idea what you're talking about. Why not wait till the story comes out before you start saying it's fake and not true and you don't like it? I mean, it is just, I'm not sure why we have two different. It's happening again on YouTube where we have two different streams. I'm not exactly sure what this. We'll figure it out eventually. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's not the most important thing in the world. Yes, that's right, neighbor. That is exactly right. I mean, that is really remarkable, and we're going to talk about it after we talk with Stephanie Murphy on the fact that this guy had been deported several times. Does anyone see a pattern where where do they to go? That is exactly. If they choose a sanctuary state, and so that's what we're dealing with. But we're going to start coming up in just a moment. Actually, we're going to slowly start here at 106. And folks, on this Friday, again, the weather is good. Good afternoon. As we speak right now, we are live on AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. Now, you can always listen online at our website, which is depetro.com. Now, by the way, we have the video up. We have the story. We did actually last night, as I said, last night was when we really started to, I had the story. I was waiting for more information, but we have the body cam footage. That is a wild story that took place. So we are live right now on X. We're live on YouTube. And we're also obviously live on our very popular Facebook page. And it is interesting to me that before some people even had the information, they started immediately attacking ICE. First of all, it wasn't even ICE agents. It was the Cranston police. All they knew was that somebody was trying to get into cars, went into the laundromat first, then ran into the freezer at Taco Bell, And that's where so, and I want to be very clear because I think this is important for this criticism about ICE. When the Cranston police apprehended the suspect, they had no idea his immigration status. Now, they obviously learned more once they got him in custody, and we'll get into that. But folks, this portion of our program is brought to you by PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Now, listen, they're open 7 days a week. They grind it, family-run business. Stop in and see them. And my friends at PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center, 3688 Quaker Lane, North Kingstown. They have a great selection of homegrown mums and kale. They also have pumpkins, straw bales, cornstalks, gourd, Indian corn, native vegetables. This is the ideal time for planting. Stop in and see them. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Now, as I mentioned, that's right, NIC agents. The DePietro.com, which we have the story, the mugshot, the video, brought to you by the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick. If you log onto the website, you can see the story. Cranston police apprehend the knife-wielding individual. And then we also have the obviously stories on latest on Pontiac and Warwick and the car in the water, and in the latest on all of that. So, but today that was a very hectic situation that happened, played out yesterday, middle of the afternoon. You know, it happened very quickly. And if you saw the video, they got called. Suddenly, this guy runs into the freezer at Taco Bell. The whole story is kind of strange, but it happened very, very quickly. And so we do have the body cam video that is up, and you can read that. And folks, I want to remind you, you know, and there's a pattern here. Someone is going along in the day, and suddenly they realize, hey, maybe they're in need of an attorney, and they probably are. Barron Murphy, criminal lawyers, 50 years combined Rhode Island criminal defense experience. Your fight becomes their fight. Call them 401-228-8271. As I like to say, don't rely on your brother-in-law or your next door neighbor. This weekend, it's very possible either you and or someone that is close to you could end up getting in a situation where they may need some legal advice and then determine whether or not they need an attorney. 401-228-8271. So, folks, let's bring her on. She is our legal expert, and it is attorney Stephanie Murphy. Here we go. Okay. And I think a little bit of a, you can see it's spinning a little bit of a, do you see that? I'm not sure why that is doing that way. We see her name, but we're going to, okay, let me see if, okay, there we go. There she is. Hold on, let me adjust this. Hi there, Stephanie. We're trying out some new software. Let me do like that. Okay, I'm going to settle on that one, folks. It is attorney Stephanie Murphy, much better. And Stephanie, first of all, as much as we do, and I like dwelling on a lot of the various local legal stories, I did want to let's just start off with what I'm trying to say is, although it didn't go to trial, I am getting people asking about son of Rhode Island, its life and for the ex-girlfriend's murder, and that is Michael Marapisi. And here are the questions just out of the box. Number one, people were questioning about the length of time, because this did happen in 2019, and that people have a different understanding when they see a plea deal that agreement was reached, but there was no trial. So if you just start on touching on that high profile, it wasn't, a trial, but a case nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely, John. So the time frame for everything is very different depending on if the person's incarcerated, if a speedy trial motion is filed. It really depends on kind of what's going on with the case, what the defendant's looking at, and stuff like that. But most of the cases definitely resolve with some sort of plea negotiations and a plea being entered. The percentage of cases that go to trial is a very small percentage. So it really depends on what the offer is by the state, or if there's a negotiation that's reached. Typically on like a murder case, if it's life in prison without parole, then you really have no risk of going forward in terms of a trial. So if the case is if the prosecutors offer a max sentence and the defendant wants to go to trial, there's really no harm in going to trial. So those cases are the ones that go. Other times plea negotiations can happen, and a defendant will take a plea
I
deal
think
in
when
order to avoid the risk.
okay. I think when people hear the word a plea deal had been reached, they think somehow like a sweetheart deal. That certainly is not the case here if someone ends up with life in prison.
Absolutely not. So, a plea negotiations are both sides. To simplify it, it's like kind of buying a car. You as a buyer wants to pay as little as possible. Defendant wants to have as little punishment. The state wants as high as a punishment as possible. But sometimes the facts and the evidence don't support that, or the defendant doesn't have a criminal record, or has a huge criminal record. So all these things go into play. Not every charge. There's not just a cookie cutter deal for each charge. A lot goes in, from victim input to defendant's record to defendant's rehabilitation. That all comes in. So plea negotiation definitely typically isn't the best deal for the defendant and not the best deal for the state. It's somewhere in the middle based upon the individual.
Now, and also people wonder about when they see life in prison, but then we do see stories that people are up for parole and they had been given a life sentence. If you could just touch on that, what are the circumstances where people may see life sentence, but it seems nowadays very rare that someone is then in their 80s, 80 years old, dying in prison.
Yeah, definitely. So if you get sentenced to a life in prison, that doesn't mean a life in prison, in all honesty. It means that you are eligible for parole at some certain times. Sometimes, depending on the charge, it's a third of the sentence. Or other times it's after 20 or 25 years. Or if you're a youthful offender, it could be a different time period. But most cases, you are eligible for parole at some point, and then it's up for the parole board to decide whether or not you're going to be given parole and stuff like that. So a life without parole is a life without parole, but a life sentence, you're definitely parolable at some point. It really depends on the crime, how old you were, and everything like that to determine when you're eligible. But most cases, except for some capital cases, you're eligible at one third of the sentence.
Now, Stephanie, I had covered this. It was a high profile incident in Pawtucket where police had actually shot someone. It was on a Sunday morning. And now we get the headline: man with mental disability shot by Pawtucket police as they allegedly pointed a toy gun at the officer. And he has now been indicted. And they did reveal some new details. That certainly got a lot of people's attention, where this guy has now been indicted.
Right, absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, when police officers arrive on a scene and a toy gun or something that looks like a gun, they first of all don't know it's a toy gun or what they're flashing at somebody. They also don't know about mental health or mental illness unless it's documented in like an extreme risk petition or something like that. But if police are responding to a 911 call, they're not really searching through the records to find out about mental health issues and stuff like that. They're responding and trying to keep everyone safe. So it's really a case by case basis of what happens, what the police officer was knowing, what the person who pointed, something that looked like a gun. So it's really a fact by fact scenario that everyone has to take a look at when analyzing and looking into a case like this.
I don't want to go too much with this, but Karen Reed files an answer to this wrongful death lawsuit. Again, it's some time away. This lawsuit, this wrongful death, is not happening anytime soon. But my understanding would be the Reed camp seem to be essentially using the same strategy of a third party defense.
Right. And as we know, like in a wrongful death case and civil cases, standards are always a lot different, stuff like that. We've seen it with OJ, we've seen it with a lot of high profile cases. But some of the defenses that you use in a criminal case that it wasn't you, it was somebody else, is definitely something that you can say in a civil case and stuff like that. It's just a different standard of what a civil case has to live up to compared to a criminal case. But some of those defenses are absolutely the same. It wasn't me. I didn't do it. I'm not responsible at all. Those are definitely, play out in the criminal world and the civil world.
There's a high profile case playing out in Boston. I don't know when this could come down. The jury's deliberating, but just any thoughts on these? They're deliberating the trial. This Dublin firefighter, he came to Boston. It was last year of 24. He's already been tried. They found the jury was deadlocked, but the allegations are just that he was sharing a room with another firefighter. The other firefighter met this female. They went back to the room. They had consensual activity, and then the allegations are that he came into the room and then took advantage of this individual. It's just a high profile case out of Boston. I'm just wondering if anything stuck out to you other than it seemingly is. It is a tough case, and just any thoughts you have on it, Stephanie.
Yeah, so when I first heard about it, I thought it was interesting how the victim in this case, immediately left the hotel room and reported it right away and went right to the hospital. On some of the cases where I'm dealing with sexual assaults, the disclosure is much later, or the person stays in wherever they were and decide to go ahead and charge some.
All right, now I am not exactly sure what happened, but obviously those that are watching, we lost our visual with Attorney Stephanie Murphy. So I'm not exactly sure why, to be quite honest. It was going along fine, and then all of a sudden her picture has gone dark. So I'm going to do this. We're going to, I would imagine she's going to come right back. And as we speak, this Terrence Crosby, the jury is deliberating right now, but it was okay. That should
I'm
be there. She
sorry.
is. Okay. Yeah, quite all right. I'm not sure what happened, but go ahead, Stephanie. It is for whatever reason, the first jury was deadlocked, and I'm not convinced that I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm not convinced they're not going to get deadlocked again.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard my response before I got cut off, but I was saying as a defense attorney, what sticks out to me is the fact that the victim left the hotel room, went to the hospital, went to the police right away. A lot of the times when I'm defending somebody with these charges, it's a late disclosure, or somebody's disgruntled or unhappy with somebody and has a history of being unhappy with them. This case just kind of stuck out for me, and something that the defense during trial had to try to explain in a way of, if she was making this up, why would she directly go to the hospital and directly report this? So it's just interesting in terms from a defense perspective, even though the burden is not on you to prove anything, kind of what you do have to prove to a jury in order to win the case. And that's something that the defense had to address in the trial.
Also, I did get questions on this. Gloucester man arrested. Police seized $12,000 worth of cocaine. The email I got were people saying, what would be the limit that if someone has drugs, illicit drugs, and they say, hey, I'm just going to do them at my leisure, that seemingly police are not arresting people anymore. But what would be the threshold where someone says, yeah, I have some drugs and I'm going to use them, or then someone then getting arrested for having a certain amount of illicit
I think
drugs?
I think it has to do with the totality of the circumstances. If they have casts, scales, if the drugs are in individual baggies, how the drugs are, stored, where they're stored. Is there a ledger or cell phone data of people making purchases, Venmo, Cash App? I think that all comes into play. But typically personal usage, I would say, is personal usage. It's not weeks and months of a supply of drugs, it's 1 or 2 weeks or something like that. But so it really has to do with what the police find, what other stuff they find with it, and other evidence of, a drug dealing operation, or is it personal use? But I find that that line's pretty easy to determine when you look at the totality of the circumstances.
Folks, it's time for Murphy's Law. This is a story that attorney Stephanie Murphy has found. And what do you have for us this week, Stephanie?
So there's been a lot of stories in the news, and we've been getting a bunch of phone calls where an adult is arrested on some sort of a felony or a misdemeanor, but they're also getting the charge of child endangerment. So I've been seeing this kind of with DUI cases, if there's a younger child in the car. There was a case where a landlord, called on.
Now, I'm not exactly sure what happened. We are live, and I don't know exactly what happened, but as you can tell that are listening or watching, again, I am not. I will have to double check. I don't know. I want to apologize to Stephanie. We've done this so many times and not had any problems. And I'm going to have to recheck, other than they've made some changes. Folks, as you know, I mean, we've done this segment with her when I've been on live on location. We've done this segment where we were outside and we didn't have any type of problem. So I'm not exactly sure what happened, where she's going along, and then all of a sudden it gets. It's so odd. Where all of a sudden, and again, I apologize, folks. This is the stuff that actually kind of drives me nuts a little bit. Is sometimes we never have a problem, and then all of a sudden now, twice we get a problem with attorney Stephanie Murphy. The only thing I can think of, as I'm just being honest and thinking out loud, is this application that we use. They just made some changes to their app, and it's very, very possible that for whatever reason it's. Thank you, folks. We have to remain calm. I feel terrible. Yes, we're aware of that, Debbie. I said that when we first started. There are 2 chats, so I don't know. We'll check into that. That's a weekend adjustment, but I don't think that's what it would be, simply because, but it's possible, and we'll figure that out. I apologize, folks. So again, I'll assume maybe it's on our end. We normally have not had that type of problem, but we're also on X and Facebook, and there's no problem. But I feel terrible that Stephanie was about to get to a story that she found, and then all of a sudden we run into this. So we're going to move. It's very possible that, and I'm not sure what. We'll double check this. They just made these, just to quickly put a period in this. They just made these changes to the app just in the past couple of days, and I was going to go through it over the weekend. And now here it is on a Friday, and we've run into a problem with it. So I apologize. We'll definitely reschedule with her. And folks, I do want to stay on track here. Remember, she's terrific. If you have a legal problem, 401-228-8271 from Marin, Barrett, and Murphy Law Firm. So now I do want to touch on. Yeah, that's right. Now we'll adjust it. I have it. It's on my list of things to check over the weekend, and then so we run into a problem. We haven't had a problem. So, but we don't guess. So we will get to the root of it. So, all right, folks. But I want to touch on I feel bad about that. The Cranston story, which again, we started talking about the that I knew that this happened yesterday. We just started getting obviously the details and the video on it this morning, and I'm not convinced that our local media will cover it to the extent that they should. And what I'm talking about is that was a very frightening situation that happened yesterday in Cranston. And all of a sudden, you had an individual with a knife, and which should say to people, which, and I understand and get that with our law enforcement and in our area, they're pretty lenient on a number of these individuals. And I want to just pull up the mugshot that the Cranston police, and I love that Mayor Hopkins has come out and said, NIC, meaning not in Cranston, not going to allow that type of thing. If you saw the way the Cranston police went after that guy and immediately took him down, it was that could have been a lot worse, and we don't know what went into it. But so we had this wild situation. Again, we have the body cam footage up on our website, depetro.com. But you had someone running in and out of traffic with a knife, and first started and then in the laundromat, then was over at made his way into Taco Bell, and again with the knife, and it threatened some other people. And then suddenly, Cranston police had to remove him. But what did we find out? He is a Vietnamese national, ordered for removal of deportation by ICE in 2007 and 2020, and has been arrested on 5 occasions in Rhode Island before yesterday. The Cranston police is going to work with ICE in regards to the latest incident. So that is worth repeating. So this is someone, why would he be in Cranston? Because it operates as a sanctuary state. This is someone, and he's Vietnamese. It's not a matter of a lot of these people, they just go after people of brown skin. No, he's Asian. I don't know, why is he here? And why has he been arrested that number of times? So now Cranston police are saying they're going to take action and they're going to work to get him removed. But it is completely unacceptable that this guy has been in the country and specifically in the state and breaking, the law in the state. And why is it, what happened with him and how bad that could have been. So Chow, a Vietnamese national, ordered for removal as a deportable alien by ICE officials in Rhode Island and Maine in 2007 and 2020. And now he's been arrested on 5 different occasions. Again, it's because of Rhode Island law. This guy should have been deported in 2020. He should have been deported, actually, if you go back, since 2007. He's been going in and out of the state. But most recently, now he's going to be deported. And what's also good is the fact that, and this should be noted, Cranston police are saying they're going to work with ICE as far as this individual deportation. I mean, I think now we all know if this were somewhere else, meaning another city or town, that they would not be cooperating with ICE. And that's where it's really problematic. And that's also where I don't think I know. You know what? Actually, I haven't checked it just because it's been a very hectic morning. But I want to see how it is. I want to see how they cover it. And I mean, I don't want to guess. I want to see if our local media suspect barricaded himself in Taco Bell freezer. A man suspected of breaking into Cranston home, trying to break in others, arrested. Brief standoff. This is Channel 12. Appeared in court, faced several charges. Called to the area of Cranston Street, blah, blah, blah. He ignored it. Story below. They got a call from someone at a home on Chestnut Hill Avenue. He broke it in, forced his way through the front door, brandished a knife, scared off the suspect. No injuries reported. He had Channel 12 Chow had previously been arrested 5 times in Rhode Island, according to police. They also said they're working with ICE. He's a Vietnamese national who was ordered to be deported to Rhode Island in 2007, and he was supposed to be deported in Maine in 2020. He was arraigned Friday, attempt blah blah blah. They haven't listed what his previous charges are. So at least 12 is listing that. So that's the lead story right now on Channel 12. What's the lead story on Channel 10? Barricaded himself, Taco Bell, also freezer, also broke in to the house. So I want to let me just give you a story. They just say a man, he's actually an illegal, went into the office, brief struggle, juvenile. So how about the juvenile was home and he tried to get into the house, and the kid, whoever the juvenile is, scared him off with the knife. Boom, boom, boom. Let's see. Look at that. Channel 10 has nothing about the fact that he was supposed to be deported. There it is. I'm going to post this. Channel 12 has it. Channel 10 does not mention the fact that he had been deported and is illegal from Vietnam. Oh, okay. Let me, I want to just, okay. 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 All right. We'll work on that. I will post this after 2:00. What now? Let me see who did this. Just have by NBC 10 News. You know, as much as Channel 10 is owned by Sinclair, which is in fact a somewhat of a conservative news outlet, I'm going to post the fact that Channel 10 won't mention. How is that possible? You know, I already know the answer. The team you trust, Channel 10, the team you're supposed to trust. Just so we're all clear, behind the scenes, they're actually very progressive. And behind the scenes, they're all actually, you know, they're how can I put, they're Harris voters behind the scenes. So, but you know, this is pivotal, and I'm going to highlight this because I already know the answer to it. You know, I can't believe they're actually doing it, but this is a perfect example. So, a question for those of you that watch Mario and Allison, and you know, watch the rest of people on Channel 10 and the team you trust and the news leader and blah blah blah. Why did they leave that out of the story? Nowhere in the story does it mention that he had actually was a Vietnamese national who they were trying to deport since 2007 and 2020. So just to be really clear, because I get the element, and I also recognize this is not going to register with a lot of people. But that to me is a perfect example of when people want to talk about bias in media. That's a good example. How do you leave that out? How do you not put that in? How do you omit that? What, why? Look at that. And I don't think I should have to credit Channel 12, but my question is, because there's so many people out there that just, I heard on Channel 10, Channel 10. Yeah, there's your news leader. It's so broken. I'm so happy to not be a part, to be an independent and not part of the establishment media. That is disgraceful. Whoever made the decision, someone at Channel 10 took that out. Channel 10, who's in Cranston, by the way. What a disgrace. I'm going to post it. They purposely omitted it. You don't take my word for it. Go on their website. Go on there. I'll check their Facebook page as if they're not posting different stories for it. But, and there's different individuals that think that someone like a Channel 10, the news leader, that they're the news leader. Cranston police say, man, barricade himself, Taco Bell also broke into a home. Now I'm on the Facebook page. What an embarrassment. It just is. I'm not going to pull any punches on this. Police arrived, blah, blah, blah. During the incident, they don't mention anything, nothing about he's being held at the ACI, nothing about the fact that he was an illegal who they've been trying to deport since 2007 and again in 2020. How can anyone, this is the quote news leader. This is who people then try to listen to, not what it used to be as an understatement. That is someone going out of their way. Now, Barbara Moore Silver, I believe, is the one who read it. But it's the whole attitude over there. It's it just is. And I get that they're owned by Sinclair. But and they also, by the way, just bought Channel 6. But why would you leave that out? Why would you leave that out? Everyone else has it in. I'll give credit to Channel 12. They have it in. Someone at Channel 10 had to remove the fact, and the Cranston police, God, they're so weak. Not the Cranston police, Channel 10. I can't even use the language I want to use. God, they're just embarrassing is what they are. What an embarrassment. A Vietnamese national ordered for removal by ICE officials. No mention of that in the Channel 10 story. God, they suck. They're just the worst. It's got to be. They're just, how much weaker can you be? Whoever made the call, who made the decision? We're not going to put that part in. We're not going to have anything about ICE. We're not going to have anything that he's been arrested on 5 different occasions. Wow. What an absolute embarrassment. They don't want to mention ICE or that he was supposed to be deported in 2020. There's your team you trust. People ask me, now, what local news do you watch? I don't watch the local news. Now, obviously, occasionally I will up, gets my attention that, and I'll just watch it that way. But I can't imagine in this day and age sitting down and watching like that's your news source. You're not getting real news. And I'm going to highlight it. I am. That is just so weak by Channel 10. God, they suck. Wow. Can you be any weaker than that? Why would you leave that out? Why would you leave that out? Why would you leave out Channel 10? Why would you leave out that Cranston police are going to contact ICE? That this guy was supposed to be deported in 2020? God, there. Why would you leave that out of the story? I already know the answer, and it's because it's Channel 10. If they weren't owned by Sinclair, God, there. That how embarrassing. Who made the call? I forget who the news director is. I may email. I may do that. I normally don't because I treat it like they can do their news and I'll do my news. But all of them. How do you? And I'm not going to bother Gene. Gene would just say, "Well, I don't do that. That's not me. I'm not on that story." Wow. I mean, that's another form of week. Folks, I want to remind you about Propane Plus. And by the way, I'm going to be very clear. I'm not angry. I'm not angry about it. It's so embarrassing. How do they leave that out? They're so predictable. Oh, somebody at Channel 10, let's not put that he's an illegal. Let's leave that part out. God, can you imagine? Yeah, the team you trust, the news leader. Why are they hiding the news? I know they're owned by Sinclair. But, and also keep in mind, Channel 10, they now own Channel 6. That is such a weak move. That is something like that, Pork Boy would do. That's how they treat it. Let's not mention that. We're going to leave that part out. Their attitude is that has nothing to do with the story. Legal. And they were trying to deport him several times. The reason it does in fact come into play is why would he choose to be in Rhode Island? It's the sanctuary state. Folks, it's Friday. We need an uplift. We need some good news. There she is right now, joining us. It is the Queen of Health, our friend Marie. Good afternoon, Marie.
Hi, John. Happy Friday. What a gorgeous day.
Happy Friday. Yes, it is. Marie, what do you have for us this week?
Well, with all the heavy stuff you've been talking about, I was thinking about the liver and how toxic it gets from our thoughts, from our foods, from our environment, from all of that. So just wanted to talk a little bit about that. Medicines, vitamins, everything go through the liver. Alcohol goes through the liver. The liver does like 500 different jobs. When it gets toxins, especially alcohol, it has to stop everything else it's doing because that's so toxic. So we have to take care of our livers. Doesn't mean we can't imbibe, doesn't mean we can't do things, but just we need to be aware that this big organ does so many things and we need to keep it healthy. So there are some things that we can do. There are some really nice supplements for liver care that you can do. Take it every day. It has all kinds of wonderful herbs in it and some amino acids that help to detoxify the liver, keep it healthy. And also, if you take it, I actually take it during the night because there's so many things you have to take on an empty stomach that your stomach is full most of the day. So I take things first thing in the morning. So if I get up in the middle of the night, that's when I take my liver support. And that's when the liver's detoxing anyway. So it's a good time to do it. Another great product, this company, in most places in the world, you have to get a prescription to get this. So it's nice that we can get it as a supplement. It's called Liver Care. It has Ayurvedic herbs. So think about India, and it's one of the oldest medicines in the world. It's the most holistic medicine, I believe, in the world. They have some really great herbs in there that can support the liver, help to build it up, help it to regenerate, help it to detoxify. And of course, if you're doing that, you have to make sure you're drinking lots of water and you're taking some good fiber too, so that you can clear things out of the system. And if you need to keep it simple, some dandelion tea or some burdock tea, those are some of the herbs that are really, they're called bitters. So they help to purge some of the toxins out of the liver. So that's my thing. We're also in cold and flu season. We get a homeopathic remedy called influenzinum. They're pellets made from the same thing that they make the flu shot from. We're waiting for it to come in. We have a lot of people waiting for it. You take it once a week for a month and then once a month through flu season, and it does protect you from the flu. So hopefully that helps.
What is going on, and It's My Health this weekend?
So this weekend we have Pilates class in the morning.
What's on tap? Yeah.
Tomorrow we have Pilates and we have a yoga class at 10 o'clock and that's it for the weekend. So quiet weekend. People can get out to all of those festivals and things that are still going on. But we'll be here. The store will be open today till 5:30 and tomorrow from 9 to 4. So I'll be here to answer questions and help people pick things out.
Folks, she is the queen of health. Stop in and see her. It's Marie at It's My Health, 1099 Mendon Road in Cumberland. Marie, you have so many fans out there. Keep up the good work, and we'll talk to you again.
Thank you, John. Have a good weekend.
All right, folks, there it is at Marie. Isn't she? She's so wonderful. It's My Health, 1099 Mendon Road in Cumberland. Now, folks, good afternoon. Now, I want you to know, I get that. Here's the thing about the Channel 10 situation. A lot of people aren't going to appreciate it, but you have to realize in a situation like this, and I'm talking about this suspect in Cranston, where the Cranston police, we had the story last night that this had happened. Now, today, the Cranston police put out a press release. We were first with the body cam footage, but nevertheless. So then you have to look at this to be objective, because I know a number of the reporters over there. I like a number of the reporters over there. But as a news organization, you have to step back. And if you want to be objective, Channel 12 puts in their news story, which was information. We all got the same information from the Cranston police. The question that I think is worthy of an answer is, why did Channel 10 remove the information given to them by the Cranston police that talks about that this suspect is illegal, from Vietnamese illegal, who previously had been arrested 5 times before, and that they were trying to, Rhode Island being a sanctuary state. And so thus, that would be one of the reasons why someone would hide here. So I want to be very clear. It's not as if Channel 10 could say, oh, we didn't know that. They have the same information that I have. They have the same information that Channel 12 has. After 2 o'clock, I'm going to look to see what are the news organizations. But you have to wonder, why would someone make that decision? And I totally get they're the number one news station in this market. Channel 10 was the first. I get, I understand the whole thing. And now they bought Channel 6. But what would, I'm curious as to what would be the mindset, meaning the rationale. Because I get that, I come across this like every other news organization where, what's going to go in, what's not going to go in. So what was the decision where they said, we're going to take out the part that this guy is an illegal, from a Vietnamese illegal, who previously they were trying to deport. And what you need to understand, this is a good example that I also want to highlight of, that's a good example of who ICE is actually going after, are people that should have been deported. Absolutely should have been deported. And then they slip through the cracks. This portion of our program, Propane Plus, all your heating and cooling, always online at propaneplus.com. Residential or commercial, you can depend on Propane Plus. That is, that is, to me, that is really something that Channel 10 decides, let's not put that part. And I also want to be clear. I'm well aware that Rhode Island has a large Hispanic population. I deal with it every day and every night, but you're supposed to be a news organization. And so they put every detail, Channel 10 now, the team you can't trust, they put every detail that the Cranston police provided to them, except the detail that this guy's actually in the country illegally, in Rhode Island illegally, and previously they were moved to deportation, except as we know, in the past, Rhode Island being Rhode Island, and then under the Biden administration, they just didn't deport anybody. But that has changed. Now, the guy that was, the knife-wielding suspect, does that sound to you? What are you going to hear? You hear people, oh, ICE, they're grabbing children. They're grabbing elderly. They're grabbing our neighbor. They're scared. Does that sound like someone? What is he adding to the community other than destroying business for Taco Bell on a Thursday afternoon? What an absolute disgrace. But I move to, why would Channel 10? Why would you omit that? Why? I'm asking the question, but I know the answer. And it's because the individuals that work at Channel 10, although they work for what's considered, the company is a conservative broadcaster, Sinclair, although they work for the company, they do not align with what their beliefs are. And so when they have an opportunity, they leave information like that out. So, and I'll be very clear. See, this is why would you leave that out? Folks, I want to remind you about Watson Materials. Remember, all your landscaping materials, Watson, call them. Call Sean. They have the largest selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island, 401-885-0600, 401-885-0600, Watson Materials. And make the most of your outside landscape lighting, pavers, retaining walls, natural stone, cobblestone, Watson Materials, 401-885-0600. That is really something. Well, folks, again, number one, if you're watching on Facebook, I would love for you to be a subscriber. Why not support the independent media? I give you all the news. We don't shield the news. We give you all the news. I believe, yeah, that's right. He's a Rhode Island citizen. I believe, first of all, this program is for adults. And it speaks volumes that right now the public school system seemingly has no control over their students. And anyone that was watching 2 days ago, you have all these Pontiac students coming in. They're not even supposed to have their cell phones. And all these Pontiac kids. Gee, I wonder why there's problems at Pontiac. Now you have problems in Smithfield. But the real problems, as I mentioned, are Woonsocket. I think one of the weakest quotes of the week is the superintendent of Woonsocket School saying, if anybody has any suggestions on how we could stop these fights, I mean, that is absolute white flag of surrender. That tells me, you know what else I can't stand? I can't stand the, I'm sorry about these fights. That is meaningless. I'm sorry fight. It's supposed to mean. What does say that is in the situation. If the superintendent is sorry about the fights, or the superintendent is not sorry about the fights, it still has no bearing on the situation. So it's meaningless to say, I'm sorry about the fights. All the fighting and students being arrested. That is absolutely meaningless. That's like a social media thing. Like the people put something happened. What do they put? Prayers for wherever. That's just like the thing to say. Well, I'm sorry about the fights. It has no bearing whether you're sorry or not sorry, because they still have the fights. But what you don't see is anyone taking action. Those Ponteganza kids, yes. Those Ponteganza kids that were all invading the chat, they're not even supposed to have cell phones in school. How's that going? Gee, I wonder. That's a surprise, isn't it? Ponteganza, that's how many students are there? There aren't even that many kids in the school. So they can't even control that. I'll tell you, you want to talk about whatever policies they're using. It's like Woonsocket. If anyone has any suggestions on how we can stop the fighting, suggestions. I mean, they're not even attempting to solve the problem. It's like the scene of Moneyball. Like, you guys don't even know what the problem is. They go around the room. Billy, I think we're all aware of what the problem is. You guys don't even know what the problem is. If anyone has a suggestion. Folks, this portion of the program, remember, get your garage epoxied with quality asphalt seal coating, 401-283-9815. Call Corey, free quote, quality asphalt seal coating. Get your garage epoxied, free estimate. They epoxy garages and patios. They do decorative concrete flooring, sport court resurfacing, pickleball, tennis, basketball, quality asphalt seal coating, 401-283-9815. Again, become a subscriber. Also, yes, we'll be active this weekend with Road Patrol Live. We'll be out on patrol. And then check out tepetro.com, where we have the story that you won't see on Channel 10. And that is the knife-wielding illegal who is causing havoc yesterday in the city of Cranston. A story that you won't see on Channel 10 because they removed any information that is an illegal. All right, if you're listening to the radio, stay tuned for the 2 o'clock news.